obviously.
Are we ready?
Yep.
There's Tracy.
Familiar.
Oh, that's funny.
All right. I'd like to call to order the Village of Ashwaubenon Finance and Personnel Committee for Tuesday, September 19th, 2023. Roll call, please.
Chris Durbo,
Here.
Tracy Pilkey,
Here.
Kelly Service,
Here.
Allison Burnett,
Here.
and Tom Self.
Here.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And please keep in mind our brave men and women that are helping protect our freedoms here and abroad. Action on the agenda.
I move we approve the agenda.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Action on minutes.
Motion to approve? Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Sorry. Sorry, Tracy. I'll try to slow down.
No, that's okay.
All right. Comments from the public must be limited to items not on the agenda, must state name and address, limited to 5 minutes. Board's role is to listen and not discuss the item. Personal issues cannot be discussed. No individuals named. Board is not able to take action at this meeting. Nobody's in the audience for the public. Anybody online want to make any comments for something not on the agenda? Hearing, seeing nothing, we'll move on. Action item 7A, consider, discuss, act on recommended amendments to the Village of Ashwaubenon Employee Handbook, sections 413 holidays, 414 sick leave to vacation conversion, 510 work schedules, hours of operation and meal breaks, 5.0, 8.1, the dress code. Joel.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Zerbal. We have 4 particular sections of our employee handbook that we reviewed and are proposing for amendments. As you likely recall, we updated a complete rewrite to our handbook about a year ago. As part of that update, we annually review the handbook to see if there are any discrepancies or maybe changes in best practices, and as a result of that have identified 4 areas for consideration. The first area is under section 4.13, which is holidays. This is largely in part to varying work schedules on the various employees. And in addition to that, it is complementary to proposed changes and amendments to section 5.10, which is related to work schedules, hours of operation, and meal breaks. Essentially what it encompasses is that individual employees who are provided with a paid holiday will receive the hours in which they would have earned had they been at work on that particular day that the holiday is observed. And so we've identified what those hours would be and have created an appendices, which is Appendix C, and I believe that was in your packet as well. Appendix C identifies the 8 known holidays or identified holidays that the village observes, and identifies the hours that would be allocated to the type of full-time employee in which schedule they work. So for frame of reference, we have office employees that work a traditional 37.5 or non-traditional 37.5 hours per week. We have office employees that work the traditional 40 hours per week. And we have field staff, public works laborers, parks laborers, and so on that also work 40 hours per week. Public safety officers are not included in this mix because under the union contract, they do have provisions in which they receive compensation in lieu of those observed days off. So this is predominantly related to more of administrative and field staff employees. And as you can see, our employees would get, depending on how our hours of operation is scheduled, the amount of hours given on that particular day. In the next section, we'll talk about having a hybrid or modified work schedule where we work longer days, Monday through Thursday, with a shorter day on Friday. Depending on which day the holiday falls in, if it falls on like a Monday, it'll be a longer amount of hours that you receive. If it falls on a Friday, you would receive a shorter amount of hours. And there would be a discrepancy in the amount of hours employees would receive based on their work schedule. It isn't necessarily guaranteed by right that you would receive a full 8 hours, even though you don't traditionally work 8 hours on that particular day. So the section 410 just tries to clarify that language and then provide an example under paragraph C where that pertains. Under section 5.10, work schedules and hours of operation, meal breaks, this past summer, the village implemented successfully a seasonally adjusted work schedule for operating hours. What we are proposing in this particular example is that we make that operating hours permanent and make it year-round. We instituted it this year, starting the Tuesday following Memorial Day, and it finished out the Friday preceding Labor Day. We had a significant morale boost from our employees over the course of that summer. In fact, many employees expressed a degree of displeasure and reduced morale when they found out on Tuesday after Labor Day that they would be going back to the traditional schedule. And the reason for that is, we're working longer hours during the week. We have a shorter day Friday. It really gives our employees an opportunity to find a little bit better balance between work and their personal lives. That extra half day on Friday really allows them to do what they need to do personally, run errands, make appointments, things of that nature. In addition to that, we're expanding our hours during the week and becoming more accessible to the public when they need us, and that would be in the early morning hours before 8 a.m. So there is some benefit. We aren't reducing the amount of hours we're available to the customer. We are simply just adjusting those hours to meet the needs of both our customers, if you will, as well as our employees. In review of that, we found that other municipalities have gone to this kind of non-traditional work schedule permanently year-round. In fact, the only municipalities that are not doing that were Ashwaubenon. The city of Green Bay has a seasonally adjusted schedule, and the village of Hobart still maintains a standard year-round schedule. All the other municipalities surrounding Ashwaubenon beyond those two do have that year-round kind of hybrid schedule. From an operations standpoint, what we are proposing is going Monday through Thursday for administrative offices, 7:30 to 4:30. On Fridays, 7:30 to 11. That would be consistent with what we had just completed this past summer. We are proposing a change, however, for field staff. So the majority of our field staff, minus some employees in parks and parks maintenance particularly, they enjoyed the same schedule as our administrative employees. What we are proposing this year is for a permanent year-round schedule of 6:30 to 3 Monday through Thursday. So it'd be an 8.5-hour day, and then a 6:30 to 12:30 on Friday. And that would provide a 6-hour day, ultimately accommodating some of those concerns and issues that we had with park maintenance in preparation for weekend activities in our parks. Still provides our field staff with what is in large part a half day on Fridays. And then it still seasonally adjusts for daylight savings issues and things like that. From an operating standpoint for field staff, we found significant benefits by going to that hybrid schedule and starting to operate earlier in the morning. Garbage collection in particular started earlier. We were able to collect our routes and make our way to the transfer location before the transfer site got busy. Prior to when we were operating under traditional hours, our operators were waiting at the transfer station from anywhere from 45 minutes to 90 minutes to unload their trucks. That's a truck sitting idle, running with an operator sitting there getting paid for that. With us entering the transfer location earlier, we're beating that rush. In fact, we're emptying or unloading our vehicles immediately upon arriving. That allows our employees to get back. And now they have 1 to 2 or up to 3 hours of extra time throughout the day to take on ancillary work that they normally would not have been able to do under the traditional schedule. So we have found some operating efficiencies by doing that, and I do believe it will provide a substantial morale boost for our employees. We would be looking, if we were to institute these two changes, we would be seeking them to go into effect January 1, 2024. So it gives us an opportunity to flesh out our schedule, get things advertised and publicly noticed that our operating hours would be changing for January 1. The second item is under section 5.0, or third item, excuse me, is under section 5.081, boot allowance. This is just to clarify that our building inspectors do indeed receive the $200 boot allowance. That had been in practice. It just was an omission on our part in writing the handbook. And the final item is under section 4.14.2. This is related to sick leave vacation conversion. This is an area that the village had previously provided to its employees a number of years ago, and at one point, to some degree, sunsetted that benefit to our employees dating back to January 1 of 2013. Essentially, what this provides is our employees the opportunity to convert unused sick leave after they've maximized their full accrual to convert to a portion of time in vacation. Effectively, really kind of encouraging our employees not to abuse their sick leave as extra personal time off, but rather saving the time, and if you're not absent due to illness or sickness, then you can convert that to vacation and be rewarded for not abusing the sick leave. At present, we have one employee that qualifies under the sunset clause of January 1 of 2013. If we were to implement the elimination of that sunset provision and allow all employees to have the ability to accrue their maximums and then convert unused sick leave, we would have a total of 16 employees out of 125 that would be eligible. So to get to 1,000 hours of sick leave, or 820 depending on the employee, it would take close to 10 years in order to accumulate that much sick leave. Fortunately, unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, today's modern employees typically don't have a tenure greater than 10 years. Oftentimes they're leaving. So we're really looking at rewarding the employees that have given us their true loyalty of 10 or greater years of tenure, plus coming to work and working and not taking those absences through sick leave. So those are the four areas. I think Tom had inquired with me previous to the meeting regarding the idea of maybe eliminating or converting the sick leave program to what is commonly referred to as like a personal time off program or PTO program. We have looked at that in the past as an opportunity, but there are a number of challenges that come with that we would be concerned with from administration. Number one, sick leave and vacation, that traditional program, is a bargain benefit to our public safety officers, so we would have to effectively negotiate that out of the contract. That would tend to be rather difficult and arduous. So if we did do it, we would likely do it for non-rep employees, and so it comes down to a matter of fairness. Half our employees, let's say, are represented in the village, the other half are not, or not quite half. So you have some fairness issues or concerns with that. The other concern that we would have is our traditional sick leave program, by and large, is looked at as kind of, to some degree, a short-term disability program. So if an individual employee is out on FMLA for, let's say, the birth of a child, and they're going to take their 12 weeks off, and they've accrued the amount of sick leave that could accommodate that, it's more or less giving them the opportunity to have paid parental leave for the birth of a child. We don't presently provide that. They would have to use one of their accruals to accommodate that. In addition to that, we do have a short-term disability program, insurance program for employees. However, the tenure of that is no more than 30 days. So if an employee is out for a non-work related injury that causes disability, they would have to wait a full 30 days in order to have that disability insurance kick in. So that sick leave really allows for them to be off that 30-day period as a short-term disability program, so that when 30 days hits, they then would qualify for the insurance. So if we were to eliminate sick leave in that regard and kind of go to a traditional PTO program, my recommendation would be, one, we need to find a more robust short-term disability insurance program to maybe date that back to no more than 7 days, and consider the possibility of maybe having some type of paid parental leave under FMLA. So maybe it doesn't necessarily give full FMLA paid benefits, but maybe certainly for a parental leave type situation, that's a very popular kind of concession that employers are giving to their employees to encourage you to stay employed with you, even through the birth and the raising of a child. So I guess those are our thoughts. Those are the conversations we've had internally about converting that there would be a pretty substantial benefit loss to our employees. And if we wanted to try to maintain some balance to that, we would have to look at adding some additional programs or benefits to our employees to offset some of the loss on the sick leave. So with that, I'll answer any questions that the committee has.
So Joel, the sick leave vacation conversion, that's, this also applies to our public safety?
The sick leave vacation conversion currently is allowed under union contract and our public safety supervisors. So the sunset clause that is currently in the handbook only relates to non-exempt general employees of the village. So currently public safety officers already receive that benefit of converting sick leave to vacation.
Mm-hmm.
Our other general employees do not currently receive that unless they had the accruals necessary prior to January 1, 2013. So we'd be creating equity, I guess, between public safety and our general employees by eliminating that sunset provision.
Okay, okay, that makes it more clear for me. Okay, thanks.
It's not a question, but more a comment that the hours of operation are the same number of hours, just configured differently if we go to this new schedule, right?
Correct.
And you even said, arguably, we are more available to people because we have that early time
We're
slot.
open earlier and accessible to the public for those types of interests that they have. If maybe they work at 8 o'clock and they can't make it to 8, but they have a payment, they have to pick up a building permit, something to that effect, they are able to come in earlier to do those types of transactions.
So as a, for instance, if somebody wanted to use the community center on a Friday afternoon, it would not be available, or they would make staff available for that?
Yeah, so the offices would be unavailable, but the community center could be available, and it just comes down to scheduling the appropriate staff to ensure that the community center would be available. So the building could be open, certainly would be open for rentals. We do offer rentals on the weekends where a part-time community center supervisor is available for those rentals, or another staff member of the department. It would just be kind of that front office area that we'd be looking to close.
So the only thing that would change is basically somebody wouldn't be able to come in and book a time.
Correct.
Everything else, though, is if something else was booked, it's as scheduled, we'd have somebody there.
Correct.
Mine's sort of like a question comment sandwich. So I love the changes to section 5.10. I think it's so important that Ashwaubenon stays competitive with what other communities are doing. And I loved hearing the fact that we're actually finding better efficiencies, especially with waste collection. I'm trying to figure out how to say this. The holiday thing, it just seems so confusing. Is that what other communities are doing with holidays as well that have switched to this schedule?
Yes, I believe so. My two prior communities had a similar work schedule where it was a longer day Monday through Thursday, Fridays was the shorter day, and it was basically the same thing. So whatever day that holiday falls on, you would essentially receive the hours paid for that time that you would have normally worked.
Right.
So if the holiday's on a Monday and that's a 9-hour day, you get 9 hours. If the holiday's a Friday and you normally work 4, you get 4 hours. And that's just how it is. And some years it's great, some holidays are great, and they fall on Fridays. That's just the nature of the schedule.
Right. Yeah. It makes sense. And I'm not trying to micromanage at all, but I look at this and I just think, oh my gosh, this seems like it would be a nightmare for the poor soul managing time off banks and accrual and payroll. So are we confident the systems we have in place at the village will be able to, maybe not seamlessly, but aspiring towards seamlessly, have employees classified appropriately, that this isn't just a complete nightmare when we shift permanently?
Yeah, we have a good understanding of what employees are the 37 and a half versus the office 40 or the field staff 40. I think that's where the Appendix C comes into play, is up front on the front end, part of the handbook. You already know what hours you're going to receive as an accrual to use during those observed holidays.
Right.
Essentially, every year they'll be rolled with an accrual that'll say holiday time on their pay stub, and they'll have a bank of hours in accordance to Appendix C. And then when that holiday actually occurs, they use the hours that are necessary, and then when they're gone kind of thing.
Okay, last thing is the other side of the comment sandwich. So don't shoot the messenger, I'm just sharing feedback. I felt personally it was adequately communicated that the village was switching to those hours. I know my neighborhood garbage pickup was very early this summer, and I'm the youngest by a lot in my neighborhood, and my retired neighbors don't like change, nor do they like putting their garbage bins out the night before. So there was quite a bit of feedback. Allison, tell the village. I'm like, well, it's really not my role. But I just think if this is going to be a permanent switch, which I hope it is, maybe all steam forward on really communicating, because there were some people who struggled with the change in my neighborhood. And I think it's a good thing. We should do it, but we should really, really, really make sure people know about it.
Mm-hmm. I think that's the intent of coming now with the idea that a January 1 implementation date, if that's what's adopted and approved, that gives us adequate months and weeks in advance to notify the general public of this change. We also recognize that Ashwaubenon tends to have a little bit of an older adult population, so it may be beneficial to us to make a formal posted notice in the paper versus the traditional, that would be the traditional method of communication, but now by and large today we're using things like social media, our electronic newsletter, our website. Maybe through those mechanisms we didn't quite reach the population that would have those same concerns that you've identified. So a posting in the newspaper might be helpful for us.
I'll personally pass it on in my neighborhood.
Appreciate that.
I got caught twice with the hours running out there, hearing the garbage truck up the street and having
Just
to run
put it
out
out the
there,
night
meet him
before.
at the end of the driveway.
And you did send mail, because I always put my village mail on my fridge. So I said, it's right here. You received this in December. Do you read your mail?
Change is good. Change is good, right? Has any thought been given to, I'm not disagreeing with the hours, I think that's a good idea, it's a very good morale thing, but I'm familiar with a situation where some of the employees got, like, this was my week to work a short week, and next week I have to work a long week, as opposed to that way you get the full services of, you keep your office open, you might say. Mm-hmm. Is that something that's feasible, or is that?
Yeah, what we, and those particular employees worked in our parks maintenance group, and again, to try to accommodate the need on the weekends. Obviously, there's a heavy amount of use of the parks, and so just making sure that enough activity was completed on Fridays in advance of the weekend. Rex and his staff basically alternated, or I shouldn't say Rex, but his staff alternated who worked the long day on Friday, who had a half day on Friday. And in conversation with Rex, we feel that by going and changing that schedule to that 6-hour day on Friday versus that 3.5 or 4-hour day on Friday, that extra 2 hours should be able to accommodate, especially given the fact that we'll have 2 employees for that full duration, complete all of our tasks in preparation for that weekend activity or that event.
Somebody might want Monday mornings off. Yeah.
You could, right. And to some regard, I do want to just, not to muddy the waters a little bit, but within the handbook, there is still the provision that based on need, a department head can alter schedules, make modifications to schedules that are kind of outside of those standard operating hours. This is just what we standardize. So if there's a particular need or a situation that requires our employees to work outside of those standard hours, we have been given the ability to do that for our department heads. An example would be, maybe you have a major tournament coming up on the weekend and you need all hands on deck. They're going to work a full day on Friday, but now they're going to have a half day off or a full day off the next week. We have the ability to do that within the policy itself. In addition to that, we have made these changes periodically based on weather conditions too. This happens sometimes in the summer where heat indices are above 100 degrees, so instead of starting at 6:30 and working till 3, maybe they come in at 5 and they work a shorter day so that they stay out of the sun during the hottest parts of the day. So we have those abilities to do that, and we maintain that flexibility.
Good.
I'll make a motion to recommend to the village board amending the Village of Ashwaubenon Employee Handbook Sections 4.13, 4.14.2, 5.10, and 5.08.1 as provided.
Second.
All right, we have a motion.
Under discussion, can I just ask a quick question? I'm sorry I didn't get in quick enough. In regard to the 6:30 start time for the public works type employees, is there a concern at all, especially in the cold winter months, that they're going to be out there in the dark in the morning and, starting their shift when it is dark out? I agree with, the hours and things, but I'm just concerned about them working and doing some of that work in the dark.
Yeah, Brian and Rex are certainly here, and they can kind of address some of that. And I misspoke a little bit, the prior hours had our public works and field staff starting at 6 a.m. in the summer hours. So we actually bumped that up to 6:30 in order to accommodate that 8.5 hour day, Monday through Thursday. So it is a little bit later than actually what we had been doing over the course of the summer, primarily for that concern that we wanted to achieve as many daylight hours as we could. But with that being said, there's certainly opportunities for us to do work throughout the building, maintaining equipment, doing things in preparation of our week's work or a day's work. But I'll certainly kind of defer that to Brian and Rex, and they can kind of address that more directly.
Absolutely, I can touch on that a little bit. So as much as we'd like to think that, when we start at 6:30, our guys are boots on the ground at 6:30, there is, I would say, 5 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes of time that the guys are actually getting their job responsibilities in the morning. And then following that, every commercial vehicle that goes out on the road actually has to have a pre-trip inspection. So as much as we'd like to think that the crews get to be boots on the ground right at that time, there is time that it takes to get equipment ready, check the oil, grease the equipment before it goes out on the streets. Generally, depending on what piece of apparatus they're using, if it's a light duty truck, not challenging. You're kind of turning the key and you're going. But a lot of our operations, whether it's a garbage truck that requires greasing in the morning and it's pre-trip inspection, dump truck, heavy equipment, all have pre-checks that have to occur before you go out and operate that equipment, which does take up a little bit of time. And if it is still something that is, it is still dark, we do have time that it takes to drive to our job sites. It may be a 5 to 10 minute drive. So generally by the time we're actually out there doing the work, it is going to be light. Sun, I think the latest sunrise is 6:50, if my memory serves me right. I don't even know. I'd have to look again. But usually by 7 o'clock, you got daylight.
Okay, I was just wondering, I think it's something we should keep track of and make sure if we start seeing, more incidents or there seems to be more injuries or something, if people are out in the dark, but it sounds like by the time they get out there, it might be light. So just something I think to keep track of a little bit.
Yeah, I don't have any concerns. I operated under these same hours at the previous municipality that I worked for, and we didn't run into any issues. But it's definitely something that we can keep an eye on to make sure that there isn't any sort of issues that are arising because of it. But didn't run into any issues for the 4 previous years that I worked under similar work hours.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we've got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 7B, consider, discuss, and act on proposed changes to the Village of Ashwaubenon organization chart. Go.
Okay, thank you, Chris. In your packet is a draft organizational chart. I'm just trying to figure out a way to share it so I can show it up on the screen for Tracy. So bear with me a moment as I get the correct screen up.
Joel, I have it right here too. I can look at it on my screen.
Okay, perfect. All right. So real quickly, as part of the annual budget process, department directors will request additional staffing levels for the upcoming fiscal year. And in addition to those increases in staffing to the various departments, there are several planned changes to the overall administration of the village for the upcoming calendar year, and that's primarily due to planned retirements or terminations of employment that we're aware of. And so as part of our effort for this upcoming budget year, we wanted to take a wider lens or more comprehensive approach to how we establish the org chart for the village. This is consistent with our overall strategic plan. It's just looking at this and really kind of identifying areas of succession within our organization. And so, again, the attached draft org chart is for the upcoming year based on all the additional staffing requests that have been presented to us from the administrative side of the village. One thing I'll note is that these are just requests. They have not been vetted or prioritized by administration. So we don't know exactly yet. Department directors have until Monday at 8 a.m. to submit their budgets to us. So once we have a more robust and clear picture of where we are financially for the budget next year, we'll begin to prioritize monetarily these positions. But one of the concerns that has been approached to me in the past is that oftentimes either the committee or even the board may not always necessarily see the whole picture, that they're only getting a refined point of view from administration as to what positions are included in the budget, and not necessarily all the positions that were proposed. So our goal is to provide a little bit of transparency and give you an idea that we do, from an administrative standpoint, work with our department directors to identify what their needs are and then figure out a way to prioritize those within the budget. So with that, I want to touch on a couple areas in the org chart that I think are important. And I'll pull it up on the screen again if I can. Let me just see. Here we go. Okay. The first part that I'll touch on is kind of what we'll call kind of the upper administrative portion of the org chart. And that's the village manager's office, the village attorney's office, the village clerk, and the village assessor. A couple key things that I will be proposing as part of this budget is to kind of retool the village manager's position to some degree, and also retool the village attorney's position. At present, my span of control, if you will, is a little bit long, and it would be ideal for my particular position to delegate some of that control to others within the organization. Our village attorney has expressed an interest in taking on some additional duties, in particular human resources and risk management, which in reality kind of fits really nicely within that wheelhouse of our legal services department, and has expressed an interest in growing and developing towards maybe pursuing future endeavors as a village administrator or manager. So in order to kind of grow that position and grow that individual, I thought it was a good idea to retool that position and eliminate some of that span of control. Part of the span of control expansion is directly related to some changes that we are proposing as part of the budget. So as this committee knows, we currently contract with Human Resources Consulting to assist us with our HR component. When we began that relationship with HRC, the idea is that at some point we would transition to having our own in-house human resources group. We are proposing that change to begin in 2024 at some point. At present, we budget $51,000 in contracted services to HRC. So that $51,000 would go towards the salary and wages of a human resources generalist. And so at that point, we are adding headcount, and if that stayed within our current arrangement and organizational structure, that individual would report to me, and now I have 10 direct reports, and that span of control kind of gets a little bit too wide. So that was the desire and the idea of advancing the village attorney, deputy village manager position so that they can oversee the HR function of the village more directly. That individual, our attorney, would oversee the HR generalist, and then oversee personnel, HR benefits administration, as well as oversee risk, insurance, and safety liability programs. At present, those fall within the village manager's office or responsibilities. In addition to that, if you look at the village clerk and the village assessor position, there is a planned retirement in the village assessor's office. As a result of that planned retirement, we are looking at retooling our assessment technician position to meet the needs of the village. As part of the shared revenue bill that was passed by the state this past year, they eliminated personal property tax. Our assessment technician's primary role is the administration of the personal property tax program. And so our village assessor, which is contracted, feels that they are able to accommodate that portion of the work through their contract. So we will no longer need to provide a full-time assessment technician to support the assessor's office as a result. However, we are going into 2024. We will have a guaranteed, well, I shouldn't say guaranteed yet, but at least 3 elections, probably 4, maybe more, depending on where things sit at both state and federal level. And in order to meet the needs of elections, which continues to increase, we are looking at retooling that assessment technician position into what we would consider kind of like a deputy clerk 1 position / administrative assistant. A portion of that job would support the assessor's office as a liaison. So there's no doubt that people will come in and have questions about their assessments and their property. This individual will be that liaison, such as the assessment technician is today. They're just not simply processing and handling technical assessment details like our current assessor, because those are being accommodated by our contracted assessor. In addition to that, we also recognize that this general area of the village, this portion of the administration, there are a number of employees that may plan to retire in the next few months, years, or 1 or 2 years, I should say. And as a result of that, we're looking for that succession. And so we recognize that at some point, despite our best efforts to keep Terry here for 10 more years, she's getting to a point in her career where maybe that may be time. So we have to prepare for that. So we're looking at retooling the confidential executive assistant position to be shared between the manager's office and the village attorney's office. In addition to that, our deputy clerk currently serves as our legal assistant. So just by retooling the assessment technician position to that deputy clerk 1 position, we're preparing that new candidate who comes in for that next step up, because that deputy clerk 2 position, that's another individual that probably could retire in the next 1, 2, or 3 years. And so again, you can see where we're trying to build a level of succession so there's advancement within the positions. And so that kind of reflects the upper portion of the organization chart. Now, each department director is here to kind of touch on their specific areas, and we'll certainly entertain their ability to do that. But I just want to, at a high level, introduce to you a few of the other proposals, and then they can certainly address those more specifically. I'll begin in Public Works. Public Works did submit a request for 2 new positions. One of those positions is an engineering technician position. The second position is a facility maintenance technician. We presently do not have an individual in either of those 2 roles. The engineering technician position currently is work that's being completed under contract through consultant engineers. And we spend anywhere from $100,000 to plus $1,000 annually in contracted engineering that could easily be accommodated in-house had we had our own engineering technician. So we can, by all accounts, generally account for the cost of that position just by eliminating the contracted services that we currently employ for a variety of projects. So that particular position should be net cost 0 to the overall general fund budget. The facility maintenance tech position is being proposed. We do not currently have an individual employed that maintains Village Hall. And what I mean by maintenance is not necessarily cleaning bathrooms, that's done contractually, but things like replacing carpet, painting walls, repairing HVA, basic low-level HVAC type issues. At present, we have our streets foreman perform much of that work in addition to Brian and others. And so this facility maintenance technician would really basically be the individual that would take the lead on those types of endeavors. And that would free up our street laborers to be able to do what they need to do out in the field. We will talk briefly about community development, and the next agenda item tonight will talk more specifically about the inspection program, but in particular, community development is looking at taking what is currently our part-time code enforcement officer and transitioning them to a full-time code enforcement officer / assistant zoning administrator. Code enforcement, by and large, is a lot to do with zoning and zoning code, so there's a marriage and a match between those two. And this has been routinely identified by the village board as being a priority, that we need to increase our code enforcement efforts, and that's why it's being proposed. On the Parks, Rec, and Forestry end of things, the department is requesting an additional park laborer. Just because of the volume of work that is occurring, the amount of programming and activities, and the maintenance demands as a result of that, there is a request for that. And I should mention that what we're talking about today is primarily substantial permanent full-time employees. There may be other requests for seasonals or temporary help and some minor part-time employees, but these are the ones that will have substantial financial impact. On the finance and IT side, this has been identified for the last couple of years, again, as a priority about the idea of creating an IT network specialist. At present, Jeremy, our network administrator, is really putting a lot of time in, much more than what he should be as far as the amount of hours per week, just based on the work demands and load. So he's doing anything from setting up MDCs and patrol cars to converting virtual network environments for GIS over to a new system and server. And so every minute is utilized to its fullest extent. And then finally, in public safety, there are a few positions that are being requested, and there are some structural changes as a result of those requests. In total, there are three positions that are being requested. One of those positions is an additional commander spot, and I'll let Chief Ewell and Deputy Chief Kozlowski talk to those items. A request for an additional investigator, for detective work. And then the third position is what we'll call a sworn PSO risk reduction officer that will oversee the inspection and fire prevention programs, as well as potentially kind of an emergency management component of the department. And so that's titled the risk reduction PSO. And so with that, I guess I will, to make this a little bit more efficient for the committee, I guess if we could, I would break down maybe some questions that you may have with the upper level of the org chart. And then if it's okay with the committee, I guess I'll refer to public safety and they can kind of walk through their proposal and then allow each department kind of through the org chart to provide their justifications. So I guess at this point, are there any questions regarding village manager, deputy village manager, HR, changes in administrative support help within that kind of upper area of the org chart?
I have one. When we get this in front of the board, I appreciate this chart. This is very helpful to see how it all fits together, and you don't have the information yet. But when you have the final information from everybody, can we also have somewhere on here a list of all the new positions you're asking by department?
Yeah,
I can find them by finding the asterisks and everything in here, but it would help me to just see.
Correct. There'll be a written narrative as part of the budget that will outline each of the positions with a written justification for each and the financial impact to the fund. Yeah.
I assume the village clerk is a statute. You have to have a village clerk by statute?
Correct.
I was wondering if, again, the village, it seems like it's connected to the village attorney somewhat. We could almost report to the village attorney, make that position clerk attorney, and you could, I don't want to say it's of a department, but you could consolidate the management of it.
Yeah, a couple quick things to that is, yes, the village clerk is statutory, and as a result of that, the appointment for a non-elected clerk position is made by the village board. The removal of the clerk would be done so by the village board, so there's this kind of quasi-reporting structure where the clerk, and it's indicated to some degree on the chart, where the clerk is appointed and could be removed by the village board, so there's some reporting there. But beyond that, yes, we have seen other municipalities have a similar setup where the clerk reports to the attorney. In particular, the city of Appleton is set up that way, where the city clerk actually reports to the city attorney. The clerk itself is in fact appointed by the council, however, just to meet those statutory requirements.
How does that work for, like, I thought you were the administrator of everybody else, and you're not really. So how does that work for, like, if they have grievances or if they, you know what I mean? Like, they're not coming to the board.
Yeah, so really the positions that don't have a direct reporting responsibility to the village manager's office would be the attorney, and again, that's appointed under statute, the village clerk, appointed under statute, and the village assessor. So I have an indirect reporting relationship with each of those positions. So in the event that they have a grievance against me, they would certainly file that grievance with Mary, the village president. If I have a grievance with them, then I would file that with Mary, the village president, and address that with the board as well. But in order to maintain an efficient work environment, there has to be some kind of indirect reporting relationship, because they all, regardless of who reports to who directly, we all work and collaborate with one another, and it's important for us to work efficiently and as a team proactively together. So that's where that indirect reporting relationship is important.
So you're all evaluating each other for compensation, raises, or, I mean, I know there's the matrix now, but I mean, there's got to be some sort of, like, who's holding whom accountable?
Well, the village attorney, the village clerk, and the village assessor, through that indirect reporting relationship, have an evaluation that I conduct with Mary for those particular positions. They don't conduct necessarily a performance evaluation unless we were doing 360-degree reviews of the village manager position. They don't report. I don't report to them. They don't indirectly. I don't indirectly report to them either. So my evaluation is performed by the village board.
Joel, can I just clarify that this is just the position or the organizational chart, including everything at this point that has been asked from our staff for additional staff? None of this has been approved yet, and that it will go through the budget process. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes. So administration still needs to prioritize this. Again, in an effort to be transparent with the committee and the board, we wanted to present kind of the full, complete picture of requests. Again, so that it doesn't be presumed that a certain request didn't go through administration and not be presented to the board or committee. And in addition to that, there's a substantial amount of requests here and changes to the org chart. So we wanted to make sure that you were provided adequate time to kind of be introduced to the topic, help digest the information, maybe think about it, prepare questions so that in the event in the future, you could ask those questions and we could be prepared to answer and justify those changes. So yes, no decisions tonight. This is just, we want to get your feedback. We want to understand what your priorities are from a committee point of view, and ultimately the village board, and then from there, administration will formulate the budget based on those priorities.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions on the, I guess, the top half of the chart?
I just have a comment. What I liked, and I heard it a couple times, you're looking ahead and you're trying to have somebody in place to replace somebody if they leave, that's good that you've got that train of thought. So that's good.
Yeah, we call it I don't know if this is a legitimate term or not, but I guess it's what I'd call it is layered leadership. So just always have that next person available to step up in the event that there's a vacancy. or leave as a result of whatever. Somebody wins the lottery and they leave the organization. Somebody could step up, at least temporarily, to fill that role, and if not temporarily, maybe permanently as well. So kind of always looking for that growth and that succession. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm not sure if Chief is going to pull anything up at all. If not, then that's fine, but I guess Chief and Nick, if you can kind of walk through maybe some of the thoughts that you have on your changes.
Yeah. Haley, if you can share my screen. I mean, I can go through this at a high level as well. I mean, we prepared a PowerPoint to kind of address our changes. See if I can figure out how to do this. All right, see if I can pull this up. There we go. All right. Appreciate your patience. So I'll go through this quickly. If you guys have questions, please feel free to stop me, ask questions. We really kind of focused on some of the challenges that we've had in the organization. And these 3 requests that we're making for staffing really addresses those concerns. The first one is investigations. Our staffing level there has been stagnant for many, many years with 3 investigators, and we have a captain there as well, which, you know, the captain has a wide span of control, which we're going to address with administrative restructuring. And we'll get into some of the justification for investigations as far as what they do and how they do it later in the PowerPoint. The fire inspection division has really been underperforming for many, many years, not getting the required inspections done, has been falling well short of that. So with the vacancy of our lead fire inspector who took a job in South Carolina, that really gave us an opportunity to kind of assess and reassess that division, decide how we want to move forward with that and what that's going to look like. So that's the request there. And then administrative structurally, really talking about spreading out the span of control, alleviating some of the administrative tasks on the lieutenants and the captains, to really what I like to use it as a force multiplier, so they can get out there and do more of their job. So I'm really requesting adding 1 position there that's really going to free up the time of 6 other people during their workloads in order to make our operations more efficient, and also spread the wealth on our Chief 390 position, which is our on-call fire chief that goes to scenes not only internally here in the village, but mutual aid as well, where it goes outside, like Pulaski Fire, for example. We had to send Chief 390 plus a bunch of other apparatus and personnel there for that. So that's only shared between 2 people right now, which makes their time off very hard to come by because they're on duty, they're on call, they are limited by their where they can go and what they can do when they're on call. So that's just the challenge that we're talking about initially. Talking about, we kind of reviewed some of the SWOT and analysis from the public and what their feedback was, both externally and internally as well, and how we're going to move forward with that. So, you know, we're really looking at whether we're meeting our goals or not. This talks a little bit about some of the questions that were in there, using the functions of the village. And really what that does is talks about the most important aspects to the household, how important are these areas. And we hold, in public safety, we hold 3 of the top 4 categories that were most important to the community. Where, you know, emergency medical services, fire service, and police services were some of the top 3, and then you have snow plowing and ice removal and stuff like that. So really talking about what we do is important to the community and how we do that. And then how, and then as far as that goes, is the customer service, how would you rate that? So if you look at that, how they rate the service that we're providing for them right now, some of it is exceptional, some of it is very good. some have no opinion, good and fair. So that's just how we rate it out in this latest poll. The other aspect of this is the internal communication. You know, some of the things that, as part of that survey is how can we improve, or what do we need to improve upon? You'll see some of the big ones were communication, both internally and externally. You'll see that staff morale, tension was one of those things that people feel that it is very difficult right now. Some of that leads to burnout. And then you'll see there's aging fleet, geographic, customer service, and zoning. So some of the big ones for us is communication, and then also morale leading to burnout. So really what we need to do is take a look at that, and by addressing some of these concerns, we're really hoping to address some of those as well. Right now, our fire inspection department, as I said, we have approximately 2,000 inspectable businesses that we have right now. Our fire inspection department is doing less than half of that currently. So we really need to make sure that we focus on that and reorganize that department. That revenue, what's called 2% dues that we get back from the state, which is, we're supposed to be meeting all these, that's over $117,000. We don't want to risk losing those funds, so we want to make sure that that department is operational. So that's really what our focus is on right now, in making that department operational, making sure that we're meeting the needs of the community as well. And talk about investigations, what they do, some of the concerns we have right now, and I'll talk about that here in a bit, but right now their caseload is anywhere between 20 and 40 cases, which really, it makes them sacrifice some of the cases that we get. So they're putting on the back burner, so to speak, some of the cases like property crimes and things like that they can't get to because of the workload that they have. So we really want to focus on, can we be reactive or are we proactive, and what are we doing right now? So we're trying to address that. And same thing with our administrative structure. It's inefficient. It leads to a poor supervision at times and workload and burnout due to the on-call rotation. So how do we meet our goals? We take a look at the SMART plan, our strategic plan, figure out what we can do there to help implement some of these things, find out what the priority is and how do we meet that. I'm going to kind of zip through this real quick. Looking at our current structure and how unbalanced it is right now. And really what this slide is talking about is what responsibilities each area has right now. You'll see the captain of investigations, for example, also has the K-9 unit, the drug task force, evidence technician, SROs. Some of those things are not really directly related to him, so we're going to move those out into the two commander positions. So I'll show that, how that's misaligned a little bit and how the span of control changes. So this is the proposed structure that we have. You will see that we're going to break this down into an operations commander and a support services commander. The operations commander will then have responsibility for the K-9 officer that I talked about, and they'll have 43 direct reports. Then we'll take a look at the support services commander, which will have 52 direct reports if you count in the paid on-call staff, but they'll also oversee the CSOs, the captain of investigations. We talk about the traffic enforcement officer that we're hoping to get, and also the community risk reduction officer. And really that position, the community risk reduction officer we're calling it, is going to be in charge of the fire inspections. It's going to be in charge of public education, nuisance properties, and also be accountable for us. Instead of the department that we have right now, we have a civilian doing it. This person will also be able to help us out internally with law enforcement duties, with fire duties, whatever it might be. We can take that person out of the office at times and they can help us there. So again, using that, that buzzword for force multiplier, it helps us in that regard as well. Keeps that fire inspection knowledge internal and allows for a pathway, as we talk about succession planning and things like that, allows for a pathway for promotional opportunities and higher education in that aspect to educate our PSOs. So that's kind of what this overall staffing would look like, with the investigations in there as well, being overseen. Support services commander. This is one of those positions where, again, we can basically allocate additional responsibilities, move those responsibilities off of our line staff and supervisors to align more with the on-call rotation with better management and responsibility for fire inspections, and oversee that unit as well. We talked a little bit, I think Joel mentioned earlier about the emergency management director position. That really would be aligned with kind of my role as well as with Brian Rickert and Mary. I know we're all kind of, and Joel, we're all kind of jointly responsible for that. So one of the things that needs to be addressed that we really haven't done a whole lot is look at our emergency management plan. So that was really kind of be moved into my role as well. And also what we want to do, and we talked about it before, was the whole succession planning lining through. So we have a commander right now. Our commander is off on FMLA for an extended period of time. In order to keep continuity with our operations right now, I had to promote an interim commander, and I took a captain out of a C-shift rotation to do that. And now by doing that, I've left the supervision responsibility of that shift short, which also makes sure that what's going to happen, and what has happened, is I have had to require overtime to fill those positions, those roles, when people are on vacation or FMLA or whatever it might be. So really, this other commander position not only would help with the 390 rotation, would help with the span of control, would help with succession planning, but also would help with these instances where we have people out and we need people to fill those roles, and how do I do that? So it all kind of goes hand in hand with that. To take a look at it, and I know last year when I talked about these presentations and what we're doing and how we're operating efficiently, we take a look at our peer agencies here. Right now our current administrative staff is 3. We're proposing to go to 4. If you look at De Pere, for example, right now they're doing it with 8. They have 3 law enforcement and 5 fire on the fire side. So they're doing it with 8. We're currently doing it with 3. I'm proposing we go to 4. So we're still maintaining a pretty lean staff. The Community Risk Reduction Unit, which was formerly the Fire Inspection Department, again, looking at the current structure, we had a civilian lead fire inspector, and we had 2 part-time fire inspectors that supplement. I would look at focusing out that, and I talked to the part-time fire inspectors as well, if we brought in the community risk reduction officer, what we would look for then is to continue to contract with the agency that we are right now, but that would unfortunately mean that we would eliminate the 2 part-time positions there to help pay for that. So they understand that. We've talked about that as well, but really what we're focusing on is meeting our requirements, looking at the pay structure and how that would equal things out. Right now, we were kind of low, and when Danny left, his pay was at $62,000. If we went to a fire inspector or a fire marshal, you'll see on there that that's anywhere from about $75,000 to $79,000. So we're really not looking to increase that a whole lot there. I'm going to skip through that a little bit because we talked quite a bit about some of the civilian versus sworn and the contracting transition process. So I'm going to pop to their investigations. I'm going to talk a little bit about our investigations as it is right now. So some of the structure in there, right now we have a captain in there, we have their 3 investigators in there, and their performance right now is, they're doing pretty well with what they have, but the types of crimes that they're investigating, primarily when we get a homicide or we get crimes that are involved heavy technology crimes, white collar crimes, they are having to subpoena records. They are spending countless hours trying to get that information back that they need to prosecute these cases. And we put this homicide slide in there because the last homicide, even though that they referred charges and they're going to trial, they're still investigating that case. They're still getting leads coming in. They're still going through jail phone call logs and things like that. They're still spending time on that case to make sure that that case is as solid as it can be. So when I talk about the hours that they're putting in has evolved over time, this is one of those reasons why I can tell you that the caseload that they're currently handling is just not sustainable for them, and it's just not sustainable for the community, because the cases that, we'll say for, lack of a better word, that are quote unquote less important, they're getting pushed down and they're not getting investigated as thoroughly as they can, or it's taken them a long time to do it, i.e. the property crimes. Those are the ones that are taking a long time to get to and get. So those are sacrificing. So those are some of the things that we're hoping to address. Now, is one more investigator going to solve all that? No, but it's certainly going to help, and it's certainly going to help them keep their head above water. Moving forward, this just talks about adding the positions through that and what that would look like for us. And as Joel will see later on, in my proposal, I've kind of looked at stacking the time frame to do that to help with the budgeting costs like that, as far as when those positions would start and how we would do that, and continue to move forward in that regard. So again, this slide talks about what that looks like. It talks about, and it compares where we're at right now with our comparable agency as De Pere. We're requesting 57 right now. De Pere is doing it with 66 total. So again, even though I'm requesting more, we're still making it pretty lean in how we operate. So that's my overview right now. There'll be more details. As you said, we'll have more details and explanation as to what it looks like financially and what it looks like internally. So with that, I'll entertain any questions.
I wish we had a money tree we could shake and give you everything you needed, but, but having said that, I'm definitely and Mary knows this, from before I was even on the board. I made comments that once we get behind the 8 ball as far as public safety wise, it's tough to get from behind that again. And it was a nice presentation. I support everything public safety does, and we need to keep this community safe. I think that's one of the key things in my always been in my mind going forward. Just make sure our community's safe, and look at it budget time. And but I appreciate all the efforts all you guys do. And
yeah, thanks for saying that. And one of the things that I did mention, and maybe Joel or Greg can correct me, I know that when you're talking about a money tree and money, we thought this was a good time not only internally to do this, but I know that the shared revenue with the state has increased. I don't know exactly what that amount is, but it might be a good time to do that just simply because that shared revenue coming in, has to be spent on public safety. So this might, I'll let them talk about that and how that works. That's not how it works? Oh, well, what's that? All right, well, I've been corrected, which I asked him to do. It doesn't have to be spent on public safety, but the shared revenue has increased, so hopefully we can find some room for that. But I do appreciate your thoughts and sentiment, and hopefully we can make sure that we can continue to move forward.
Any other questions for public safety? Okay, just for the sake of, I guess, moving. Nope, sorry, go ahead, Tracy.
I just have a quick one, Brian. Can you send your PowerPoint presentation out to the committee so we can look at it more in detail and maybe get a better sense of what you're looking at?
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you.
Wanted to touch on Parks, Rec, and Forestry. So Rex, I don't know if you had any other commentary, but just obviously looking for an additional maintenance employee.
That's correct, Joel. Yeah, so right now we've got 3 people. The latest one was added when the community center was built. And that third person we have right now is allotted 50% of the community center time, 25 forestry, 25 parks. I'll be honest, I probably say 70% of that time right now is being spent on parks, and we just can't keep up. COVID's changed the way people talk to you and ask for things. It's also put a larger demand on the services, and we're not getting any smaller. We're getting busier with the density here in the entertainment district, the people using the parks, the development of the riverfront area, some other specific areas, and it's just been hard for years. I mean, I've been here about 17 going on 18 years now, and we've always been able to add things in and somehow eliminate other things, and it's been a good give and take. Can't do that anymore. We just can't. I get phone calls from residents, quite honestly, about trails that need clearing or being pruned back. The trails down by the riverfront with the geese that we have, we got goose poop all over. Can you come out and sweep them? Sometimes it takes us a week to do that, sometimes longer. Sometimes it takes like a month. Tim's got a backlog. If someone said they needed a tree trimmed because it's overhanging their parking spot in front of their home for their motorhome or something like that, it would literally take us months to get out there. That's where we're at right now. And we're not, like I said, we're not getting any smaller. We've got 3 park maintenance people to manage 300 acres. I've got 1 forester to manage the whole urban forest that we have. I know the chief here was talking about the pier a couple times. I've got some numbers too. The pier's a good one to go against, I guess. They've got eight park maintenance people. We have 4. They have 1 staff person for every 50 acres. Our staff cover one person for every 75 acres. I mean, I can go on with ICMA, the City County Managers Association metrics, the National Rec and Park metrics all have different metrics and numbers that say if you have this much parkland, this is what you should have to be able to maintain them in terms of staff. And like I said, for years, as in all the departments, quite honestly, in Ashwaubenon, that's why it's so difficult. I don't envy the village board members at all, nor any of you, because there's good reasons for anything. For years, we've been lean, the old term lean and mean. We've been lean and mean for years and years, but with everything that's happening here, whether it be public safety wise, public works wise, park wise, program wise, with all the special events that we're adding on and things like that, we can't keep on doing it without increasing those staff at some point. And for my department, for Park Rec and Forestry, we're at that point. And I don't even want to talk about what's been happening with emerald ash borer and the trees, because that's been probably 80% of the time that our forestry department has been working towards. We're not even putting in for the general street tree pruning program again this year because we just don't have the time to do it. Nor does Tim have the time to management if it was contracted out. We're busy, and thanks to Brian and the public works guys, he's able to give us some help, and he just poured some concrete slabs for us in the last month, and in the winter he helps us with some of the tree removals. So we've always made do with what we can, sharing people between departments, but with the village becoming what it's becoming, and again, the center of Brown County, I guess, and everything that's happening, I'm looking for another person. We can't keep the pace up with what we've got right now. So that's why I'm looking for another park laborer position, just to get out there and try and take care of the backlog. We're not giving them any new duties. It's trying to take care of the backlog of the projects that we've got and the fix-its that we need to take care of for what we currently have.
Any questions for Rex at all? Okay, I think we'll just move on to Public Works and Utilities and get the operations side of things taken care of. So Brian, I guess if you have any comments that you would like to make.
Right, so much like Rex, I do not have a PowerPoint presentation, so Brian, you're making us all look bad. So just to touch on, I'll first start on the engineer tech position. That essentially is a elementary level engineer, someone that has a 2-year associate's degree. Their general day-to-day tasks would be working on, just construction inspection in the construction that's occurring throughout the village. During the off-season, they would be focusing on things like culvert inspection, manhole inspection, inlets. Many of those services, I shouldn't even say many, all of those services we contract out now. Generally using Ayers and McMahon. They both do a great job. Both Steve and I, village engineer, do manage to make sure that they're not, taking any additional time when they're out there inspecting. Do follow the Wisconsin DOT critical inspection guide to let them know when they should and should not be out there full time. For instance, just this year alone, between Morris, Element, culvert inspections we had done, in the parking lot reconstruction, we spent $162,000 in contracted services for those service. And for me, it's one of those things that's in the previous municipality I worked for, I was used to having an engineer technician. It's like, holy cow, you know, that money has come and gone, and normally I would have that person here for the rest of the year, but they're not, and it's because engineering staff bills out anywhere in between $100 and $130 an hour. So that's why those costs stack up so quickly. With that, I know we're doing a lot of comparisons to De Pere. De Pere has 4 engineering technicians, 3 engineers. However, they do all their engineering in-house. This person will not get us to that point where we're doing all of our engineering in-house. We will still have to contract out all the design work that's being done. Moving on to the facilities maintenance technician. As we all know, this building's not getting any newer. As buildings begin to age, little things like faucets, you know, toilets that leak, things like that occur more and more frequently. This facility is used, as we're aware, you know, 24/7, 365. So there's times that, you know, the HVAC fails. You know, unfortunately, it's, you know, generally in the middle of the night and things need to be checked into, and we're, you know, kind of scrambling to figure out who's going to take care of those things. Oftentimes pulling public works guys off from their normal job duties in order to perform those repairs. So it would be, take some of those responsibilities off from both myself, Lee, who is our operations supervisor, and then also our public works foreman, who kind of keys up a lot of those repairs and then uses also public works operations staff to assist him if needed. You know, if they're doing a, you know, carpet replacement or something like that, it'll be more than just a singular person. So a lot of that, some of that work may still have to occur like that when they are tackling a big project. But the day-to-day things, changing out light bulbs, you know, furnace filters, you know, fans for the blower units for the HVAC, someone going up on the roof, cleaning all the leaves out of all the roof drains. I mean, it's just stuff that I kind of incorporate, you know, into my day, or they incorporate into their day. You know, hey, I know I'm going to have a few minutes on the phone here. I might as well go up on the roof and clean all the leaves out of the roof because the, you know, honey locust trees are dumping leaves everywhere. So it's just stuff that'd be very helpful to have that person to have their primary focus be to take care of our facility here, along with our public works garage.
Brian, who takes care of those tasks you're talking about? Maybe I missed it, but is it just kind of collectively everybody?
It's split. You know, ultimately it's whoever can get to it between myself, our operations supervisor, and then one of our public works foremen. So it's whoever honestly has a gap and can break free from their schedule to try to make things happen. And honestly, there is times when requests come in that we kind of have to just pump the brakes and have to compile items to, you know, a rain day. And that's why you'll notice sometimes there's light bulbs are burnt out for weeks on end. And it's because we just compile a list, and when there is a rain day or a day that it's 95 degrees out, you know, we take those public works staff and we pull them in to do some of those items. So.
Okay. And then the engineering technician sounds like, as far as the cost to the budget, it sounds like a net zero or possibly even a savings.
Correct. Yeah, there should be a savings. With that, you know, it's a position that would be funded majority from the utilities, storm, water, sewer, and then also our water departments, because a lot of the inspection that they're doing is when they're installing the water main, the sewer, in the stormwater systems. But yeah, I would say net zero or potential savings. It's all going to depend on what the workload is for that year. You know, some years there could be more savings, some years there may be a little bit less. It all depends on what our projects are.
Because obviously you'd be able to contract out less.
Correct.
Yep. Okay.
Absolutely. The other thing too is it would allow us to be a little bit more proactive in our repairs. It's, you know, generally we're going out and looking at a manhole after the casting settled out of the pavement, you know, and after that point in time, it's, well, the manhole's already started to fail. So it'll allow us to hopefully get ahead of that curve, to, you know, kind of lump projects together. Maybe you can contract out, you know, hey, we need 4 manholes rebuilt, rather than, hey, this one failed, then we have to repair it because the road's falling apart. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Any other questions for Brian and his request? And then I'll just touch on finance and IT. Greg is obviously here. I think by and large, the IT network specialist position is more of a workload management concern for us and the volume of work that Jeremy is responsible for, but I guess, Greg, if you have any other comments that you want to provide.
No, I think you hit it right on the head. It's really just the amount of IT and technology within currently and the exponential growth of it. Everybody replaces something with new technology, which requires, it seems simple, just, oh, you just plug it in the wall and turn it on. No, it's doing the research to make sure, as simple as these wireless mics or like anything new that's going on, the lights on the bridge, that's going to require time and energy and effort and potentially more server work. It's every little thing, and it's just his time that is just, and then you have people that, you know, have computer problems, or he's building PCs, he's ordering everything. So this is somewhat long overdue. We tried doing a part-time position, and that didn't work well because people, you just can't sustain an IT person on part-time. So yeah, I think it's really just load management for Jeremy. The hours, you know, he shouldn't have to continue to work 60, 70-hour work weeks, and that's basically what he's doing. So.
Any questions on IT? Okay, last item, and Aaron's last because he'll have the third agenda item tonight as well. So the Assistant Zoning Administrator, Code Enforcement Officer, again, priority for the village. I guess any questions regarding that for Aaron?
So you said that that's changing existing position, right? Is it just adding code enforcement formally into the role, or is it a new role?
So we currently have a half-time code enforcement officer. So his full-time half-time job is strictly code enforcement.
Got it.
This will be taken into a full-time position along with some various zoning administration activities.
Thank you.
So as you can see, a lot of requests. It's going to be difficult to prioritize those requests and identify which one should stay in. I guess based on your initial input, any concerns about the requests that should not be considered, I guess, is the easier question, because I think there's certainly justification for any of the positions, but I guess if there's a concern of any of them, let us know. If there isn't, we'll continue to prioritize those, and that way you have at least an understanding at an introductory level as to what was submitted to us administratively in the budget and how those are proceeding forward as we continue through the process.
I'll keep this really quick. I guess one general comment, you had noted that this will go into a round of prioritization as the next step. It would be really helpful to see not just, I don't know what that's going to look like, but rather than seeing, okay, these are just the ones that made the cut for this budget, actually showing us what a multi-year staffing plan might look like of, okay, if not, like we can afford to just add one role in this department this year, but we're really going to need it in the next 2 to 4. Just help us visualize how many years you imagine it would take to reach full implementation of this, so we understand for future budgets what is coming down the road. Like with the HR generalist, that's been planted in our brain for 2 years. We knew that was coming, and we were brought up to speed on these other departments tonight, but I just think it helps us justify when constituents have questions to say, oh no, we've known about this for years. This is a real need. Here's why.
Certainly.
We had talked at one point about having a full-time enforcement officer for the changes we made with the short-term rentals. Was that one of these that we already covered?
Yeah, that responsibility would fall on the code enforcement officer.
The last
Assistant
one we
Zoning
just talked
Administrator.
about. Okay.
Correct.
I think what we have to keep in mind, the village is changing a lot. We don't have a lot of single-family homes, and we don't have new single-family homes. We have multifamily loans, we have hotels going up, and that all changes everybody's job description in the meantime. So I think we have to keep that in mind when we're doing this budgeting process. It'll allow for that.
That's a good point.
Okay, thank
I
you.
like Allison's comment about we have so much staff that we're asking for here. We can't possibly do it in 1 year. But putting a plan together, kind of like our capital improvement plan, where we're going to step and how we're going to try to fill some of these roles. I think Rex hit it on the head. We have a lean, mean machine forever, and it's time where we have to start getting some more staff in there, or some of our lean, mean people are going to start to leave us because it's just.
Oops.
Tracy, we can't hear you. Just
We
hang
lost
on a
your
sec.
audio, Tracy.
Haley, I don't know if there's anything on your end.
Some of the concerns of the department heads, and they know it's coming. It may not come this year, but it'll at least alleviate some of their concerns that they know the next year maybe they'll get it.
And I think that was one of my intents anyway, was to bring this forward to you so that you could see it, understand that there were a number of requests. Some of them may not be able to be accommodated, or simply we came up with alternatives to the initial request that ultimately still tries to achieve what our goal was with that particular position, but maybe is done in an innovative way, if you will, shared positions, things of that nature. But with that in mind too, that at least it's there, it's been identified, and if it is still a priority, it will be kind of earmarked as that going forward in successive budgets and successive years.
Tracy, I know you've mentioned that in the past about, and I agree with you, about being lean and being proud of that, but at some point, at what cost? And I think we're getting really close to finding out. But I definitely agree with you. We've got to, there's going to be some tough decisions now. All right. That was information only, right?
That is correct.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? All right, we'll move on to C, consider, discuss, act on building inspector position updates and authorization to proceed with recruitment/hiring of the position.
This one is hopefully somewhat basic. One of our building inspectors, David Busco, had resigned his position effective last week, Friday, September 15th. As a result, staff have kind of modified work and load to accommodate that vacation of position. In order to kind of move forward with this particular role, we would like to make a few subtle changes. One in particular, our current senior building inspector has been performing her role exceptionally well, and by and large has been kind of serving as a mentor to the prior inspector previous to that individual's departure, and really kind of provides a leadership role as it relates to inspection services for the village of Ashwaubenon. So we want to recognize that, and we want to provide that individual with the opportunity to expand their role and provide a, kind of more defined and identified leadership for the inspector. And then we also want to kind of broaden the scope of the inspector position that we're looking to fill. Our previous job description was a senior building inspector involved in plumbing, and so the credentials were a little bit higher and stricter to obtain. What we're looking to do is kind of broaden that a little bit, maybe reduce the individual requirements on the front end so that we can expand a larger pool of applicants into that position, and then allow our proposed chief building inspector to lead, mentor, and manage that individual, as had been done in the previous circumstance. But then again, structurally recognizing the fact that they're the chief, they're the mentor, they're the leader of that inspector. So as part of your packet, and the request is that, one, we reclassify our existing incumbent inspector to the chief building inspector position. That would increase a step, a grade in the wage matrix. And then in addition to that, approve the revised job description for the building inspector position, and then authorize the solicitation of applications for such. So with that, Aaron is obviously here to kind of talk through the details if need be, but we're looking for a recommendation from committee tonight.
Looks great.
I'll make the motion to recommend the approval of the creation and classification of the chief building inspector position and the advertising and hiring a building inspection position as requested by the village manager.
Second.
Under discussion, just one question, Joel. Moving Katie up one level, do you think that's enough? She's taking on a supervisory role, and she's going to have a lot more work on her plate. Did you look at other departments, make some comparisons to see if that's enough? It doesn't seem like a big enough jump for me for her being the chief inspector.
Yes, I did. So by making that grade jump, that grade 11 wage would fit her exactly into that 85th percentile that we looked at the previous meeting. So highly competitive wage for that particular position, yes.
All right, any other questions, comments? Okay, we've got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, items for next agenda. Anybody got anything they want to see? Talk about anything? No?
And we will likely have an October meeting. We, for sure, as from a staff perspective, will be presenting fees and charges schedule for the upcoming budget. And then just a reminder to the committee that our November meeting will get adjusted to accommodate the budget. So I believe that's on Tuesday, November 14th. That's the joint meeting with committee and board for the upcoming budget.
Okay. All right, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed?
Aye.
We're adjourned.